No one imagined that the man carrying luggage through the lobby of the Grandview Hotel in Boston was actually the owner of the entire place. But that was exactly what was happening. And what came next would change the lives of two people forever. Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire owner of 47 luxury hotels across the United States, was pretending to be a bellhop named Ethan Cross. The idea of disguising himself had seemed brilliant the night before. His hotel was falling apart in online reviews. Guests complained about terrible service. His manager, Tony, kept insisting everything was fine. Ethan needed the truth, and no one tells the truth to a billionaire boss. So he became a bellhop. And while he was there in the lobby carrying bags near the front desk, he saw a woman who was already managing 3 different crises before 8 a.m. Dark circles under her eyes, wrinkled uniform, moving between an angry guest, a confused caller on the phone, and a staff member asking her for a decision. All at the same time. No manager in sight, just her. Her name was Simone Hayes, receptionist, the actual person running the hotel while everyone else collected paychecks. And Ethan had no idea yet that she was about to say something that would freeze him completely in place. Before we get into this story, drop a comment and tell me, which city are you watching from? And at the end, make sure you rate this story from 0 to 10. Now, let's dive in. It was a video call on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Ethan's empire started to crack. His business partners were done being patient. Ethan, the Grandview is a sinking ship. Cut your losses. We're talking about liquidating assets, selling the property, and moving capital to something that actually performs. The numbers told a brutal story. Occupancy rates had plummeted 18 months straight. But the real killer? The reviews. Worst service I've ever experienced. Management is a joke. I'll never go back. One guest after another. One negative review after another. The Grandview wasn't just failing, it was failing publicly. It was failing in a way that damaged his brand, his reputation, his portfolio. His operations manager, Tony Westbrook, was supposedly running the hotel, but something fundamental was broken. The financial charts showed declining occupancy, revenue that had dropped 30% in just over a year. The staff in the back rooms looked exhausted, demoralized, like people who had given up. And Tony? He moved through the hotel like a ghost collecting a paycheck, not building, not leading, just existing, insisting that everything was fine while the hotel burned around him. Something was fundamentally broken at the Grandview. But what exactly? That's the question Ethan couldn't answer from his penthouse. So he made a decision that night that would change everything. He hung up the call and sat in silence. Then he stood. He walked to the window of his sleek Boston penthouse overlooking the city he dominated for decades. And he made a choice. I'm going to find out what's really going on. And I'm not going as the owner. He picked up his phone and called HR. I need you to hire a bellhop for the Grandview. Name, Ethan Cross. Don't do a background check. Don't ask questions. Just get him on the roster starting tomorrow morning. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to see the truth. Sometimes you have to step outside the corner office, step outside the power structure, and look at your empire from the ground level. Because the people at the top, they'll tell you what they think you want to hear. But the people at the bottom, they'll show you what's actually true. The Grandview Hotel's exterior caught the morning light, and for just a second you could see what it used to be. Beautiful architecture, elegant proportions. But the moment you walked through the doors, the illusion cracked. The lobby felt tired. Guests were checking out with the kind of tight-lipped politeness that came from disappointment. Ethan arrived at 7 in the morning, dressed in the bellhop uniform. He looked nervous. He looked out of place. He looked like a man who'd never done manual labor in his life, because he hadn't. Tony Westbrook found him in the back hallway and gave him the briefest of orientations. No warmth, no investment, just logistics. You'll handle luggage, run errands, help guests get settled, stay out of the way. Then Tony walked off, already checking his phone, already somewhere else mentally. Ethan stood alone in the hallway, absorbing the instruction like a spy absorbing a mission briefing. He was ready to observe. He was ready to see what his empire looked like when the owner wasn't watching. And what he was about to see would challenge everything he thought he knew about his own hotel. Because as he walked back into the lobby to start his shift, he saw her. Simone Hayes at the front desk, managing 3 different crises at once. An angry guest demanding a room change. A phone caller frustrated about a lost reservation. A staff member asking her for a decision only a manager should make. And no manager anywhere to be found. Just her. Handling it all, solving it all, making it work. Ethan had walked into the Grandview planning to find a broken system. What he didn't know yet was that he was about to find something far more important. He was about to find the person who'd been holding everything together. The person no one had bothered to see. Here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever been in a situation where you were doing a job way above your pay grade and no one even noticed? Drop your answer in the comments below. It was 9 in the morning when a man in a wrinkled suit stormed up to the front desk of the Grandview Hotel. His face was red, his jaw was clenched, and he was done being patient. He'd traveled for 12 hours. 12 hours of airports, security lines, delayed flights, and the exhaustion that comes with moving your body across the country. All he wanted was a bed, a shower, a room where he could collapse and reset. But his reservation was gone. Not delayed. Not moved to a different date. Gone. Completely erased from the system like he'd never booked it in the first place. "This is unacceptable," he said, his voice rising. "I made this reservation 2 months ago. 2 months. And now you're telling me there's no record of it? I want to speak to your manager. I'm calling corporate. This is the worst experience I've ever had at a hotel." The other guests in the lobby turned to watch. The energy shifted. Tension rippled across the space. And Tony Westbrook, the operations manager, stayed exactly where he was, in his office, behind a closed door, ignoring the commotion like it didn't exist. That's when Simone Hayes stood up from her desk. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She moved with the kind of calm that only comes from having handled this situation 100 times before. She stepped out from behind the desk and looked directly at the man. "I'm so sorry. Let me fix this for you right now. What's your name?" And something shifted in the guest's face. It wasn't the words exactly. It was the way she said them. Not defensive, not dismissive, not making excuses or blaming the system or telling him there was nothing she could do. Just, "I'm gonna fix this." Simone moved back to her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She wasn't wasting time. She wasn't transferring him to someone else. She was doing the work, herself. She pulled up the reservation system. She looked at the timeline. She found it. Double booking error. 2 guests assigned to the same room on the same date. Someone in housekeeping had flagged it but never escalated it to management. It had fallen through the cracks because there was no one paying attention. No one except Simone. Within 5 minutes, she had a solution. A better room. One of the hotel's premium suites that had been held for VIP guests. A room upgrade that should have required manager approval. She didn't ask for permission. She also didn't stop there. "I'm also going to add a complimentary dinner to our restaurant for tonight. No charge. Consider it an apology from us for the mistake." The guest stood there. His anger had nowhere to go. It dissolved. It transformed into something else. Gratitude. Relief. The feeling of being seen, of mattering. "Thank you," he said, and he meant it. "Thank you. You actually care." He walked toward the elevator with his keycard in hand, his exhaustion replaced by the knowledge that someone had fixed his problem, that someone had gone beyond what was required, that someone had treated him like he mattered. Ethan Caldwell watched this entire exchange from across the lobby. He watched Simone stand up. He watched her solve the problem. He watched her go above and beyond without hesitation. And he saw something in her that he hadn't expected to find. Competence, authority, leadership, all coming from a woman whose title was senior receptionist. After the guest disappeared into the elevator, Simone sat back down at her desk, and for just a moment before she pulled herself back together, you could see it, the exhaustion, the weight, the cost of caring this much in a place that didn't care back. A coworker from housekeeping approached her desk. "Another save from Simone," the coworker said, shaking their head with a mix of admiration and sadness. "You did it again." Simone didn't smile. She just nodded. And in that moment, she seemed to open a door and let her coworkers see the truth behind the competence. "I've been here 6 years," she said quietly. 6 years of fixing problems that aren't my job to fix. 6 years of handling situations that should be handled by managers. And my title is still senior receptionist. Same title. No raise, no promotion. The coworker's face fell. "That's insane. You should be the manager, not Tony." Simone looked at her hands, at the desk, at the hotel around her. "That's not how this works," she said, and her voice carried the weight of someone who'd accepted an unfair reality long ago. But there was something else in her eyes, something that hadn't been completely resigned. Not yet. During her break, Simone called her mother. Her mother's voice came through warm and worried, the way mothers' tired voices always are when they love their children. "How was work, honey?" "Same," Simone said. "Busy." "Mom, did you take the new medication? The one the doctor prescribed?" Yes, I took it this morning," her mother said. "Good. Make sure you take it again at dinner, okay? And don't skip it. Promise me." "I promise, sweetheart. Don't worry about me. How are you doing?" Simone didn't answer for a moment. She looked at the break room wall, at nothing in particular, at everything at once. "I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay." But she wasn't okay. Not really. This job wasn't just a job. It was survival. It was her mother's medical bills. It was the medication that kept her mother alive. It was the apartment, the food, the life they were building together on a salary that had never increased in 6 years. She hung up and gathered herself. She straightened her uniform, she took a breath, and she went back out to the lobby with a smile on her face. That's when she saw Tony. He was walking through the lobby, criticizing a housekeeping staff member for something that hadn't been done. His voice was sharp, dismissive. He was pointing to a solution that Simone had actually suggested earlier that morning, but he was taking credit for it, acting like it was his idea, his leadership. He walked past Simone without acknowledging her, and on her face, you could see it. The practiced patience, but also the exhaustion, the weight of being invisible, the cost of solving problems that no one would ever thank her for. She straightened her uniform again, and she turned to the next guest with a smile. This was unfair. Everyone could see it. Everyone felt it. Something had to change. Before we continue, I just want to say, if you're still here listening to this story, thank you. This is a new channel, and honestly, every view, every like, every subscription means everything. It tells me their stories matter to you the way they matter to me. So if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. All right, let's get back to it. Ethan Caldwell had been working at the Grandview Hotel for exactly 4 hours, and already he was seeing things his business partners had completely missed. By noon, a couple arrived at the front desk. They were tired, they were frustrated, and they were upset about their room assignment. "This room is right next to the elevator," the woman said. "We specifically requested a quiet room. We're here for our anniversary. How am I supposed to celebrate with constant noise from guests coming and going all night?" Tony was standing nearby. He barely looked up from his paperwork. "That's the best we have available," he said flatly. "You're lucky we had a room at all. It's the summer season." The couple's faces fell. Their disappointment was visible. They'd paid for a premium experience and were being dismissed. That's when Simone approached. She didn't interrupt. She didn't make excuses. She simply overheard and immediately moved into action. She checked the system. She looked at the available rooms, and she found something better. A suite on the quieter side of the hotel, away from the elevator traffic, with a view of the city. "Actually, I have a better option for you," she said to the couple. "This room is much quieter. It overlooks the city. And since we put you in the wrong room initially, I'd like to upgrade you at no additional charge." She personally walked them to the elevator. She explained the layout of the hotel. She apologized for the inconvenience. She made them feel like they mattered. By the time she left them at their room, the couple's frustration had transformed into gratitude, into the feeling of being cared for. Ethan watched this entire interaction, and something clicked in his mind. This wasn't title-based authority. This wasn't someone doing a job because they had to. This was real leadership. the kind that comes from actually caring about solving the problem. Later that afternoon, housekeeping was in crisis. Someone had called in sick. The hotel was fully booked. There were rooms that needed to be cleaned and turned over, and there weren't enough hands. Tony's solution was simple. Just work faster. We'll manage with fewer people. That was it. That was his leadership. Work harder. Do more with less. No support, no plan. Just pressure. Simone's approach was completely different. She went to the housekeeping manager and asked what rooms were highest priority. Then she personally helped with certain rooms. Not because it was her job, but because the work needed to be done. She coordinated with the laundry department to speed up the linen turnover. She adjusted the timeline for check-ins. She reorganized the workflow to make it more efficient. And here's what happened. No one complained. The work got done. Morale stayed intact. Ethan realized something watching this. She wasn't solving problems by delegating them. She was solving problems by taking them on herself, by being willing to do whatever it took. That was real leadership. But the real test came at 4 in the afternoon. A guest in room 412 collapsed. A health emergency. The man was conscious, but in distress. His wife was panicking. Within seconds, Simone was coordinating the response. She called security. She called an ambulance. She communicated with other guests near the room, reassuring them everything was under control. She kept the lobby calm even as an emergency unfolded above them. She was the center of a potential disaster, and she held it together. Ethan watched her do this. He saw the fear in her eyes, the adrenaline, the weight of responsibility, but he also saw her humanity, her commitment, her willingness to step into a crisis that wasn't technically her problem. When the ambulance arrived and the guest was taken care of, Simone sat down for just a moment. You could see the adrenaline wearing off, the exhaustion hitting, the cost of caring that much becoming visible on her face. But she gathered herself, and she went back to work. That's when everything changed. The next morning, Tony called a staff meeting. And he was angry. A guest had complained about noise from housekeeping. It was a legitimate complaint. Someone had been working in a room 2 doors down from where the guest was trying to sleep. It was a scheduling error. But Tony didn't own the error. Instead, he blamed Simone. I need better communication from the front desk, he said in front of all the staff. You should be flagging these issues before they become problems. Simone hadn't done anything wrong. She didn't schedule housekeeping. She didn't make the decision to work during those hours. It wasn't her mistake. But Tony needed someone to blame, and Simone was the easiest target. She sat there for a moment, listening to this accusation, and then she stood up. Tony, you scheduled housekeeping during peak hours, she said. Her voice was calm, but it was also clear. That's a management decision. I handle the front desk. I didn't make this call, so I won't take the blame for it. The staff went silent. No one talked back to Tony. No one stood up to him. No one challenged his authority. But Simone just did. Tony's face went red. His voice rose. You're out of line. You need to remember your place. And Simone's response, this was the moment that would echo through everything that came next. My place is doing my job right, which I do, every single day, without credit. She sat back down. The meeting ended awkwardly. Everyone dispersed, but the energy had shifted. Later that afternoon, Tony called Simone into his office. His voice was different now, controlled, threatening. I don't appreciate your attitude, he said. You need to be careful. You work for me, and I can make your life very difficult here. It was a threat, barely veiled, barely disguised as a conversation. Simone left his office shaken. Ethan saw her outside, visibly stressed, checking her phone, worried about her job, worried about what she'd just done. But she also didn't look broken. By the end of Ethan's first day, he was sitting with the reality of what he'd witnessed. He'd come to the Grandview looking for a broken system, and he'd found one. But it wasn't broken because of a lack of resources. It wasn't broken because of bad luck or market conditions. It was broken because the wrong people were in charge. He'd found someone holding a broken system together with sheer will. Someone solving problems that weren't her responsibility. Someone leading without a title. Someone going above and beyond for a hotel that didn't even acknowledge her existence. At the end of her shift, Simone was alone in the lobby. Closing duties. Restocking supplies, checking systems, making notes for the morning team. The kind of work that no one would ever thank her for. The kind of work that kept a hotel running but never made you noticed. She stopped for a moment. She looked around the lobby. At the hotel she'd been holding together for 6 years. And on her face, you could see the truth. This place matters to me, even though it doesn't see me. That's when Ethan made a decision. He pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice was quiet but certain. I need to set something in motion, and I need your help. He knew what he had to do. He just didn't know yet how everything would unfold. 2 weeks before the most important event of the year, Tony Westbrook made a decision that would change everything. The Grandview Hotel had been booked for a major gala. Not just any event. A gala for Boston's elite business leaders. The kind of event that could transform a hotel's reputation overnight. The kind of event that could turn a failing business into a destination. This was the biggest revenue opportunity the Grandview had seen in months. If it succeeded, the hotel's reputation would shift. Guests would come. Reviews would improve. The bleeding would stop. But if it failed, it would be the final nail in the coffin. Tony volunteered to oversee the event himself. He saw it as an opportunity. A chance to impress. A chance to prove his value. A chance to be the hero who saved the hotel. What he actually did was set up a disaster. He immediately started cutting corners. He reduced the catering budget. He hired cheaper event staff who'd never worked together before. He skipped quality checks. He made decisions without consulting anyone who actually knew how to run a major event. Simone saw what was happening, and she tried to stop it. Tony, we need better coordination, she said. This timeline is too tight. We need more staff, better vendors, proper planning. But Tony dismissed her. I've handled bigger events than this. Trust me. Simone didn't trust him, so she started documenting everything. Every decision, every cost-cutting measure, every warning she gave that he ignored. 1 week before the gala, reality arrived. The caterer called. They confirmed they were understaffed. Tony hadn't paid for the full team he'd promised. The event was going to be short-staffed in the kitchen. The linens hadn't been ordered. The venue setup was delayed. The guest list had errors. Important people were missing from the invitation list. Duplicate names were there. It was chaos. It became clear to everyone watching. Tony either had no idea what he was doing, or he was intentionally setting this up to fail. Either way, the gala was in crisis. And he blamed Simone. He called her into his office. You should have caught these problems earlier, he said. His voice was controlled, angry, dangerous. This is your responsibility. But Simone knew the truth. She realized in that moment, he's setting me up to take the fall. If this event fails, I'm the one who will be blamed. I'm the one who will lose my job. She could have walked away. She could have protected herself. She could have let the event fail and let Tony face the consequences of his own incompetence. No one would have blamed her. Everyone knew she'd warned him. But she saw the bigger picture. The staff at this hotel needed this event to succeed. Their morale was already fragile. A major failure would destroy them completely. And the guests who were coming, they deserved better than what Tony was setting up. Simone made a decision. I'm going to fix this, she said. And she meant it. She stayed late, night after night before the gala. She personally contacted caterers and renegotiated contracts. She brought in additional staff from other vendors she knew and trusted. She fixed the guest list, coordinating with the event organizers to get the right people there. She worked with housekeeping and maintenance to ensure every detail would be perfect. She was working past midnight. Exhausted, her eyes red, her body worn out, but absolutely unwavering. Ethan witnessed all of this. He saw her at 1 a.m, still coordinating details, still solving problems, still refusing to let this hotel fail. A coworker found her at midnight, still working. Why are you doing this? The coworker asked. It's not your job. It's not even your event. Why are you destroying yourself? Simone looked up from her computer, and her response cut to the heart of everything. Because this hotel deserves better, and I deserve better than to let someone like Tony destroy what I've built here. Those words stayed with the coworker. stayed with everyone who heard them, because they were true. The night of the gala arrived, and everything was perfect. The catering was excellent, the staff was coordinated, the guest list was correct, the venue was set up beautifully, the atmosphere was electric. The Boston elite walked through the doors of the Grandview Hotel and felt what a luxury experience actually felt like. Guests were impressed. Staff moved with confidence and coordination. The energy in the room was the energy of success. And Tony was everywhere, smiling, shaking hands with important people, basking in the credit for an event he'd almost destroyed. Simone was working the event too. But she wasn't taking credit. She was just making sure everything continued to run smoothly. She was invisible, as always, solving problems no one would ever see, ensuring success that no one would ever attribute to her. That's when Tony found her. He approached her with a smile, that dismissive smile he always wore. "Next time, try to catch these issues earlier," he said, like he was giving her advice, like he was the mentor and she was the apprentice who'd finally learned her lesson. Simone stopped what she was doing. She turned to face him directly, and something shifted in her face. Something hard. Something final. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried the weight of 6 years of being overlooked, 6 years of solving his problems, 6 years of being invisible. "You know what, Tony? I don't need your approval. I don't need your credit. I don't even need this job to know my worth. The hotel works because of people like me, people who actually care. People who show up and do the work even when no one's watching. It survives despite people like you." The world seemed to pause. Ethan Caldwell, standing nearby, heard every word, and he literally froze. This moment, this was it. This was the moment everything changes. This was the moment he realized who should actually be running this hotel. Not Tony. Not anyone else. Tony walked away humiliated, his smile gone, his confidence shattered. Everyone around them had heard. Everyone knew what Simone had just said was true. Simone turned back to her work, shaken by her own boldness. She just risked everything. She just made it personal. She just challenged the person who could fire, and she had no idea if she just lost her job. But Ethan knew. Ethan understood in that moment what needed to happen next. He made a final decision. Tonight, after this event, he was going to tell her who he really was, and he was going to change her life. After the gala ended, after the last guest left, after the staff had cleaned up and gone home, Simone found herself alone in the quiet corner of the hotel lobby. The space was silent now. Empty. Just the soft lighting and the echo of what had just happened. What she'd just said to Tony. What she'd just risked. She was processing it all. The boldness, the fear, the realization that she just challenged the man who signed her paychecks, and she had no idea what was going to happen next. That's when Ethan found her. He wasn't wearing the bellhop uniform anymore. He was dressed in a suit. An expensive suit. The kind of suit that didn't belong to someone who carried luggage for a living. Simone looked up, confused. Before she could say anything, he spoke. "We need to talk, somewhere private." She didn't understand, but she followed him. They went to his suite, a room she'd never been in before. A room that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone important. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. Her voice was small, afraid. "Is this about what I said to Tony?" "No," Ethan said. "The opposite." He took a breath, and then he told her the truth. "Simone, my name isn't Ethan Cross, it's Ethan Caldwell. I own this hotel. I own 47 hotels across the United States." The world stopped. Simone's face cycled through emotions so fast they were almost a blur. Shock, anger, betrayal, confusion, fear. "You were spying on me," she said. "Not a question, a realization. You were testing me." "I came here to shut this place down," Ethan said. His voice was calm, honest. "To sell it. To cut my losses. I'd already made the decision. Your hotel was going to be erased." Simone stood up. She felt sick. Violated. Like everything she'd done for the past 2 weeks had been watched and judged and evaluated like some kind of corporate audit. "But I watched you," Ethan continued. "For 2 weeks, I watched you hold this place together while everyone else failed. I watched you stand up to Tony when you could have stayed silent. I watched you risk your job for excellence. I watched you work past midnight to save an event that wasn't even your responsibility." He stepped closer. So no, I wasn't testing you. I was learning from you. Simone didn't know what to believe. She was angry. She was confused. She didn't know if she could trust anything he was saying. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. "Because I'm about to ask you something that will change your life," Ethan said. "And you deserve to know who's asking." He paused, and then he said it. "I want you to be the general manager of this hotel." Simone's response was immediate and absolute. "No. You haven't even." "No," she said again. "This is a trick, or a test, or you'll change your mind when I don't do things your way. You'll realize I'm not good enough, or I'm too difficult, or I don't fit the image you want for your hotel." Her voice was shaking now, but not with emotion, with something deeper, with trauma, with the weight of 6 years of being invisible and overlooked. "I've been invisible here for 6 years," she continued. 6 years of solving problems, fixing crises, holding everything together. And now the owner, the man who was spying on me as a bellhop, suddenly wants to promote me? After 2 weeks of watching me work? That's not how the world works. That's not how people like you operate. She wrapped her arms around herself. "I can't afford to lose this job," she said quietly. "My mother depends on me. If I take that role and fail, I have nowhere to go. I have no safety net. I have no backup plan. I just have this job and the hope that it keeps paying my bills." Ethan listened. He didn't interrupt. He let her say everything she needed to say. "You won't fail," he said finally. "You've already proven you won't." "You don't know that," Simone said. "I do," Ethan said, "because I've watched you handle every kind of crisis this hotel can throw at you. I've watched you solve problems that should be solved by managers with degrees and experience. I've watched you lead without a title, and I've watched you do all of it without recognition or credit or appreciation." He stepped closer. "You don't need me to see your worth. You already know your worth. But I'm offering you the platform to prove it to everyone else, to the staff, to the guests, to the entire city of Boston. I'm offering you the chance to run this hotel the way it should be run, the way you've already been running it, but without the invisible part." He paused. "And Simone, if you fail, you won't be alone. I won't let you be." Simone stood there. She wanted to say no again. She wanted to protect herself. She wanted to stay in the safe, invisible role where she couldn't disappoint anyone because no one was watching. But something in his voice was different. Something was sincere. Something was real. She saw it in his face. He wasn't testing her. He wasn't setting her up. He was offering her something genuine. Something she'd been earning for 6 years without even knowing it was possible. "If you're lying to me," she said slowly, "if this is some kind of corporate move or a way to exploit me, or if you change your mind, then you'll be prepared," Ethan said, "because you always are." And something broke open in Simone in that moment. Not broke like shattered. Broke like a dam breaking, like a wall finally coming down, like the possibility of something different becoming real. "Okay," she said. Her voice was quiet. "Okay, I'll do it." Later that night, they stood together looking out over the empty lobby, the hotel at rest, the place Simone had been holding together for 6 years, completely unaware that someone was finally seeing her. "Tomorrow, everything changes," Ethan said. And Simone believed him, because she'd already changed everything by standing up to Tony, by refusing to be invisible anymore, by speaking the truth even when it could have cost her everything. Tomorrow, the world would finally catch up to who she already was. Tomorrow, her story would shift from the invisible woman to the woman everyone had been overlooking all along. Tomorrow, she would become the general manager of the Grandview Hotel, and nothing would ever be the same. The announcement came the next morning. Ethan called an all-staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the hotel's conference room. They didn't know why. They didn't know what was coming. They just knew something was about to happen. Ethan stood at the front of the room. His voice was clear, decisive, final. Effective immediately, Simone Hayes is being promoted to general manager of the Grandview Hotel. The room erupted. Not with applause, with shock, with confusion, with resistance. Some staff members who'd worked with Simone, who'd watched her solve their problems, who'd seen her excellence firsthand, they nodded. They felt validation. They felt relief. Finally, someone who actually understood the hotel was in charge. But others looked confused, skeptical. A receptionist as general manager? That wasn't how things worked. And Tony Westbrook's face was pure rage, pure humiliation. His career just ended in a single sentence. He'd been replaced by the receptionist he'd been dismissing for months, by the woman he'd been spreading rumors about, by the person he'd underestimated completely. Ethan continued. Simone has proven herself to be the heart of this hotel. She's solved more crises than anyone here. She's cared more about this place than anyone here, and she's going to lead us forward. The meeting ended. Staff dispersed. Whispers began immediately. Simone walked into the general manager's office, Tony's old office. She closed the door behind her. She sat down. She took a breath. This was real. This was happening. She picked up her phone and called an all-staff meeting for that afternoon. When the staff gathered again, Simone stood in front of them. Not from behind a desk, standing, present, visible. I know my promotion is surprising, she said. I know some of you question it. I know some of you are wondering how a receptionist became your general manager. And that's a fair question. She paused. But I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to prove something to myself. I'm here because I believe this hotel can be excellent. I believe you can be excellent. And I know we're going to do it together. Her voice was steady, confident, but also humble. Not arrogant, just certain. I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your honesty. I'm going to need you to tell me when I'm wrong and celebrate with me when we get it right. Can you do that? Staff nodded. Some nodded because they believed in her. Some nodded because they were shocked into compliance. But they nodded. That's when Simone got to work. She reviewed the financial books immediately. And what she found made her understand why the hotel was falling apart. Tony had been mismanaging money for months. Cutting corners. Paying vendors late. Making decisions based on short-term profit instead of long-term sustainability. Simone began identifying which staff members would adapt to new leadership and which ones wouldn't. The ones who'd been enabling Tony's incompetence had to go. The ones who'd been suffering under his management needed to be empowered. She implemented new protocols, new systems for guest service, new communication channels, new quality control measures. She knew exactly what needed to happen because she'd been watching it not happen for 6 years. But Tony wasn't going to go quietly. He started spreading rumors, vicious ones. He told staff that Simone had only gotten the promotion because she'd seduced Ethan, that she wasn't qualified, that this would fail, and she'd be exposed as the fraud he knew her to be. He undermined her decisions in front of staff. When she implemented a new guest service protocol, he told people it was a waste of time. When she reorganized the work schedule, he told staff she didn't know what she was doing. He leaked false information to guests about service issues that didn't exist. He tried to turn long-time staff members against her. He was fighting for his reputation the only way he knew how, by destroying hers. But Simone was waiting for it. She called Tony into her office 3 days into her new role. I know what you're doing, she said. Her voice was calm, but it was also ice. I know about the rumors. I know about the false information you're spreading. I know about your attempts to undermine me. Tony's face went white. You don't deserve this, he said. His desperation was visible now. You're a receptionist playing manager. This whole thing is a joke. Simone leaned back in her chair. No, she said. I'm a manager who started as a receptionist. There's a difference. And that difference is why you're fired. You have 2 hours to clear your desk and leave this building. Tony left, shocked and humiliated. The man who'd been dismissing Simone for months was being escorted out by security. But Tony's departure didn't solve everything. Some of the veteran staff who'd worked under him for years still questioned Simone's authority. They questioned her decisions. They tested her leadership. But Simone didn't back down. When they challenged her, she explained her reasoning. She listened to their concerns. She made adjustments when they made sense. She was firm when she needed to be firm. And slowly, something shifted. Staff began to respect her. They began to understand that she wasn't playing manager. She was actually managing. One veteran staff member who'd been deeply skeptical came to her office after a week. I doubted you, he said. I thought you were in over your head. But I was wrong. You know what you're doing." That validation meant more than Ethan's promotion. It meant the people who'd worked with her, who'd seen her from the ground level, now believed in her. But the real test came when a VIP guest arrived, a high-profile business leader, the kind of guest who could tank a hotel's reputation with a single bad review, the kind of guest who expected perfection. And something went wrong. A reservation error, a room assignment mistake, the exact kind of crisis that would test Simone's credibility. She handled it personally. She didn't make excuses. She didn't blame the system. She listened to the guest without defensiveness. She took responsibility for the failure, even though it had happened under Tony's watch. She fixed the problem and went above and beyond. The guest left not just satisfied, he was impressed. "Your manager is exceptional," he said to Ethan. "I'm staying at 5 other hotels in Boston this month. I'm moving my entire stay here." That one guest decision brought 5 other reservations, 5 opportunities to show excellence, 5 chances to rebuild the hotel's reputation. And then it happened. Positive reviews started appearing online, not just neutral reviews, glowing reviews, people talking about the Grandview Hotel again. But this time, they were talking about it as a destination worth visiting. Staff morale visibly improved. People who'd been exhausted under Tony's management suddenly had energy. They had direction. They had someone who actually cared about them. Occupancy rates began climbing. Month 1 of Simone's leadership, occupancy jumped 15%. Month 2, 20%. The hotel was becoming viable again. Simone was becoming the visible face of the hotel's turnaround. She was in meetings with vendors, she was greeting guests, she was training staff, she was everywhere, doing the work, building the future. Ethan was there too, but he was in the background, letting her lead, supporting her decisions, believing in her vision. When they'd cross paths in hallways, there were moments. A look across a crowded room. A conversation about the hotel's future that lingered longer than it needed to. Hands almost touching when they reviewed reports together. The professional respect between them was evolving into something deeper, something neither of them was acknowledging yet, but both of them were feeling. At the end of the second month of Simone's leadership, she sat in her office looking at the hotel's improving metrics. The financial charts that had been declining were now climbing. The occupancy rates that had been catastrophic were now healthy. The reviews that had been devastating were now glowing. She sat back in her chair, and she allowed herself a small smile. "We're actually doing this," she said to herself. The Grandview Hotel wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. And the woman who'd been invisible for 6 years was finally visible, finally recognized, finally understood as the leader she'd always been. If you're watching this and you're seeing how far Simone has come, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next will prove that excellence, when finally recognized, can transform not just a hotel, but everyone around it. Don't miss what comes next. 3 months into Simone's leadership, the Grandview Hotel was unrecognizable. Not because it had changed, because it had finally become what it was always meant to be. The lobby that had once felt tired and worn now gleamed with fresh paint and updated furniture. The lighting was warmer. The energy was different. Guests walked through the doors and felt what luxury was supposed to feel like. The staff that had once looked exhausted and demoralized now moved with purpose. Their uniforms were crisp. Their smiles were genuine. They believed in what they were doing because they finally had someone leading them who actually believed in them. Guest reactions told the story. Smiling faces, positive interactions. People talking about their experience at the Grandview like it was something special, like it was worth recommending to friends. Online reviews were pouring in, 5-star ratings, praise for management. People specifically mentioning Simone by name, thanking her for her excellence, for her attention to detail, for making them feel valued. Social media mentions were increasing exponentially. The Grandview was becoming a destination again. People were choosing to stay here. People were choosing to recommend it. But the transformation went beyond numbers and reviews. A wedding was held at the Grandview, a destination wedding, a celebration that could have gone to any of the five-star hotels in Boston. But the couple chose the Grandview, and Simone's team coordinated it perfectly. Every detail, every moment, every transition seamless. The couple left not just married, but grateful. They talked about their wedding at the Grandview like it was the perfect beginning to their life together. A major corporate conference chose the Grandview over competitors. A conference that brought hundreds of guests, hundreds of opportunities to show excellence. And Simone's reputation was spreading through Boston's business community. People were talking about the hotel as a destination. People were talking about the woman running it as someone who understood hospitality at a deeper level than most. A local news station ran a feature on the hotel's turnaround. They interviewed Simone. She was professional, charming, articulate about her vision. She talked about the hotel not as a business to be optimized, but as a community that needed to be nurtured. The segment was beautiful, and it reached thousands of people in Boston. It showed them who Simone was, what she'd built, what she'd accomplished. Staff retention improved dramatically. People who'd been looking to leave now wanted to stay. New applications came in constantly. The best hospitality professionals in Boston wanted to work at the Grandview. They wanted to work for Simone. They wanted to be part of what was being built. The hotel began winning awards. Local hospitality organizations recognized the transformation. Simone was invited to industry events, to speak on panels, to be recognized as an emerging leader in Boston's hospitality scene. Local business leaders were talking about the Grandview again, but this time they were talking about it as a destination. As a place where excellence wasn't just promised but delivered. As a place where the woman in charge actually cared about creating something meaningful. Simone was becoming known in Boston hospitality circles, not as a receptionist who'd been promoted beyond her ability, but as a leader, as a visionary, as the woman who'd saved the Grandview Hotel. But something else was happening too, something neither Simone nor Ethan had planned for. They were spending a lot of time together, working closely, sharing victories, sharing challenges, having long conversations about the hotel's vision, about where they were going, about what was possible. And in those conversations, vulnerability was creeping in. Late one night, they were in Simone's office reviewing the day's success. Numbers climbing, guests satisfied, staff engaged, everything working the way it should. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "I came here thinking I'd found a broken hotel," he said. "Turns out I found something else." Simone looked at him. "What's that?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her, saw her, the way she'd been seeing the hotel all along. "I'm still figuring that out," he said. The moment hung between them, heavy with possibility, with things unsaid, with the knowledge that something was shifting beneath the surface. Days later, during a hotel event, they stood together watching the success unfold. Guests arriving, staff moving seamlessly through the space, the energy electric, the atmosphere perfect. A guest approached Simone, an important guest, a business leader who'd stayed with them before, back when the hotel was failing. Now he was back, and he was impressed. "Thank you," he said to Simone. "I didn't think you could pull this off, but you created an exceptional experience. I'm telling everyone about this place." After he left, Ethan leaned in. "You did this," he said. "All of this." Simone shook her head. "We did this." They were close, close enough that the air between them felt charged. The moment felt loaded with possibility, with the weight of everything they weren't saying. A few days later, in the newly renovated lounge, they found themselves alone. An unexpected moment of quiet. An unexpected moment of privacy. Ethan spoke first. "When I came here, I was going to destroy this place," he said. His voice was quiet, personal, vulnerable. "I was going to liquidate the assets and move on. You stopped me from destroying something beautiful." Simone met his eyes. "You gave me a chance," she said. "When no one else would. When no one else saw me." They acknowledged the connection between them. The professional respect that had been deepening into something more. The partnership that had become something neither of them could quite name yet. But neither of them acted on it. The power dynamics were complicated. Professional boundaries mattered. They both understood that. But it was clear, there was something there. Something inevitable. something that was waiting for the right moment. Audience felt it too. These two were inevitable. The question wasn't whether something would happen between them. The question was when. Then came the invitation that changed everything again. Simone was invited to speak at the Boston Hospitality Conference. Not as a panelist, as a keynote speaker. The Grandview's turnaround was being studied as a case study. Hotels across the city were analyzing what Simone had done. How she transformed a failing business into a thriving one. The woman who'd been invisible for 6 years was now being recognized as a leader, as an innovator, as someone worth listening to. Her confidence had grown visibly. She walked through the hotel now with the presence of someone who understood her own value, who understood what she'd accomplished, who understood that she belonged in this position. She was no longer invisible. The Grandview Hotel saw her, the staff saw her, Boston saw her. And most importantly, Simone saw herself. But Ethan was watching all of this unfold, watching her become the leader she'd always been, watching her shine, watching her understand her own power, and he was falling in love with her. If you're watching this right now and you can see where this story is going, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next, when Ethan finally acts on what he's been feeling, when Simone and Ethan acknowledge what's been building between them, will prove that sometimes the greatest love stories are built on the foundation of genuine respect. And sometimes the person you're looking for is the person who was standing right beside you all along. 6 months after Simone became general manager, the Grandview Hotel was ready to show the world who it really was. The grand reopening celebration was extraordinary. The entire Boston hospitality community was there. Hotel owners, managers, industry leaders, the people who'd watched the Grandview fall, the people who doubted it could come back, the people who'd written it off as a lost cause. The media was there too. Cameras, reporters, people ready to document a story that everyone wanted to see succeed. Because this wasn't just about a hotel anymore. This was about transformation. This was about an underdog story. This was about a woman who'd been invisible finally being seen. The space was beautiful. The renovated lobby gleamed. The staff moved with confidence. The energy was electric. This was a moment of vindication for everyone who'd believed in the Grandview, for everyone who'd believed in Simone. Ethan took the microphone. The room quieted. Everyone wanted to hear what the billionaire owner had to say about his failing hotel's resurrection. 6 months ago, Ethan said, I was ready to close this hotel. I was ready to liquidate it. I was ready to move on to the next deal. But I decided to do something unconventional. I decided to look at my own business from the ground level, and what I discovered changed my perspective on leadership forever. He paused. His eyes found Simone in the crowd. I discovered excellence in an unexpected place. I discovered a woman who was doing manager-level work as a receptionist. A woman who was solving problems that weren't her responsibility. A woman who was leading without a title. A woman who was caring about this hotel more than anyone else in the building. His voice was steady, sincere, emotional. Simone Hayes didn't just save this hotel. She showed me what true leadership looks like. She showed me that titles don't create leaders. Character creates leaders. Commitment creates leaders. Caring creates leaders. He looked directly at her. Simone, thank you for not giving up on this place. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. Thank you for proving that excellence, when finally recognized, can transform everything. The room erupted, standing ovation, applause that seemed to go on forever. Simone was visibly emotional, tears streaming down her face, trying not to cry in front of everyone. Then she stood. She walked to the microphone. The room quieted again. I used to think I had to be invisible to be safe, she said. Her voice was strong, clear, powerful. I thought if I stayed in the background, if I didn't ask for recognition, if I just did the work, then at least I'd have my job. At least I'd have security. At least I'd be protected. She looked out at the crowd. But what I learned is that excellence demands visibility. And you deserve to see it. The staff at this hotel deserves to be seen. The guests at this hotel deserve to be seen. And I deserve to be seen. She paused. The struggle was real. The growth was real. But I couldn't have done this alone. I had a team that believed in me. I had someone who saw my value before I fully believed in it myself. And I had the courage to stand up and claim what was mine. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause was deafening. After the event ended, after the guests left and the staff dispersed, Ethan found Simone in the newly renovated lobby. Everyone else was gone. The space was empty. The lights were soft. The beauty of what they'd built together was visible in every detail around them. "Simone," Ethan said, "there's something I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I'm going to do it before I lose my nerve." He extended his hand. "Would you join me for dinner? Not as the owner and the manager, just as two people who started this journey together." Simone took his hand. Her voice was quiet but certain. "I thought you'd never ask." They walked toward the exit together. The hotel they'd saved surrounding them. The future stretching out in front of them. Two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. Who'd built something extraordinary together. Who'd proven that excellence, when recognized, can change everything. As they walked out into the Boston night, the final message appeared on screen. Sometimes, the greatest luxury isn't what money can buy. It's being seen for who you really are. What did you think of Ethan and Simone's story? Do you believe in second chances? Do you believe that excellence speaks for itself? Comment below and tell us what you would have done in Simone's position. I want you to rate the story from 0 to 10. What score can you give it? Drop it in the comment. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in Simone. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone's been overlooking all along.